Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on Forza Horizon 2 doing an investigation into the Storm Island rally parts. Now, a little while ago, I had a look at how the parts affect the cars when we go off-road, and the general consensus was that putting on race tyres and race parts on the cars make them go faster regardless of where you're driving them. So even on the off-road terrain that we have on Horizon, having race tyres and race suspension made the car quicker. However, with the Storm Island DLC coming out, there were some new proper off-roading parts. There's off-roading tyres, some proper off-roading suspension, and an off-roading sort of short-range gearbox. Which got me thinking, would they actually make the car, would they be faster? Is it better to use those parts for the off-roading? I mean, it makes sense to say that it would, but I wanted to go and test it out and see what results that we got. I was going to use three different cars. The first vehicle, of course, is the Ford RS200. I've also selected a track on the Storm Island, a nice, very nasty rally track with plenty of jumps and bumps and corners to be dealing with. Now, the RS200, of course, is a Group B rally car. It is four-wheel drive, so it should be able to deal with some of the rougher terrain. Now, all vehicles are going to have 3 runs through this course, and then I'll be taking the best time through the course, and then we'll be comparing the times as the parts change through here. Initially, I was just going to get a sort of a benchmark for the vehicles. We're going to drive the cars down here completely standard and then get the times for them. You can see the size of some of the jumps here that the cars are going to have to contend with. It's pretty damn extreme. I'll be honest. I'm not sure in real life an RS200 will be too happy about you doing that. The next vehicle that I was going to be using, we have the four-wheel drive rally car, so why not a rear-wheel drive Grand Tourer, the Ferrari F12. I do like this car. It is a lovely car to drive. But it's not designed for this sort of terrain. That is a humongous jump that we get away with somehow. I'm not sure. Again, Ferrari, you do that with an F12, it's not going to be very happy with you. But the Ferrari was just about okay with the terrain. Now, cars on Horizon 2, if you drive a Lamborghini down here or this Ferrari down this course, you are not going to utterly destroy it. It is a little bit lenient on that respect, but it's more of a would putting on the proper rally car parts actually make the car go faster, not make it survive. Everything's going to survive this terrain, whatever. But it's about whether could it make it go faster. But I didn't have too many issues with the Ferrari. Yes, it's quite scary, but I didn't have massive amount of issues. And our third vehicle is the Bowler EXRS. I think I got the letters the right way around. Now this has got the ride height. This is the sort of terrain that this car is just about designed to survive. I think it should probably survive the size. The jumps are ridiculous. The cockpit view doesn't do the jumps justice. Really, it's absolutely ridiculous airtime you get off some of this action. But this car has got a lot more ride height. Yes, the Ford is designed to be a rally car, but it hasn't got the same ride height as the Bowler. So the thinking is that maybe this one here will survive the jumps a lot better. And you'll see as it's going down here at this moment in the footage, is much more comfortable with the jumps. Yes, they are very large jumps. They're incredibly huge jumps, but the Bowler is more comfortable dealing with the landing and the driving around these particularly nasty sections. We have a look at the times for the standard cars. It's pretty much what you would expect given the PI. The RS200, it's lower PI than the Ferrari, but the Ferrari's a rear-wheel drive Grand Tourer on dirt. I'm not really surprised to see the RS200 going a little bit quicker, in all honesty, because the RS200's just got the grip and the Ferrari doesn't. The Bowler is towards the top of A-class, so it's quite a bit, it's a fair bit lower than the performance of the other two cars, so its time is to be expected. So with the standard runs done, it was then time to take the cars and upgrade them. You may have noticed in this early shot of the Ferrari, it does look a little bit high. Well, that's because this is running on the Storm Island suspension. Now this raises up the cars, it softens the spring, softens the dampers, I believe, as well. Yeah, it looks a little bit strange. I will be honest, putting these parts on a Grand Tourer or a supercar does look a little bit strange, having the cars raised up. They have also got the dirt tyres, so you can see the tread just about on one of those camera shots, and we have got the off-roading gearbox, so we've got much shorter gear ratios in this vehicle. So again, we go off to the course to give the cars 3 attempts. Now, putting on these rally parts will raise the PI, so the RS200 here now goes towards the top of S1 class, and the car was very nice and easy to drive. There really was. It dealt with everything. It was nicer on the landing of the jumps. It's not impossible to get into trouble. Just by putting these parts on doesn't mean your car is now immune to having trouble over the jumps. It is still possible to get it into trouble on the landing of the jumps, because you know it's still got an awful lot of forces going through the car. I may have also got that one very nearly wrong. The car sort of tilting to its side on takeoff. The gearbox is better for this particular course. It is. It takes a while getting used to having such tiny gear ratios, but you're never going fast enough on this particular route to run out of gears. It was then the Ferrari's turn to have a go, and again it dealt with the course better than it did previously. Unsurprising, really. Had a tiny little ding on the wall through there. Yeah, it dealt with the course better than it had done before. We had some more grip through these corners. It wasn't quite as oversteery, quite as slidey around. We got a big moment over the jump. Again, the same with the Ford. Just by having the suspension on the car, you still got to be careful. I mean, this is still going to be quite low in terms of ride height compared to some of the rally cars, but it's better, as you would expect. It survives the jumps better. It has more grip through the corners, and the gearbox gives it that little bit more acceleration, that little more drive out of the corners. So yeah, the Ferrari wasn't a particular problem, shall we say, going around the course. Even with the very big jumps, that's still a pretty heavy hit on the ground. The Bowler, well, yes, there is a lot more grip in the car because the tyres are better than the standard ones. As far as surviving that, you can really chuck it through that corner. That's a lovely corner. When you get that corner just right, it is so much fun. It's like a tiny dabble of brakes and throw it in. And because of the way the corner's banked, you can really slingshot it out the other side. Huge amounts of fun. I love that corner now. But the Bowler, it survived just as well because the standard suspension was still pretty beefy. It still had plenty of ride height. I didn't really notice any difference, shall we say, in the suspension. Yes, the tyres offered more grip for the car, but the suspension was fine before, so as you would imagine, it is perfectly okay this time round as we throw it over some jumps. Yeah, the Bowler was perfectly okay driving down this course, and I'm not too surprised by that. When we have a look at the times, well, it's a fairly similar story. Everyone has improved on this one. The RS200 is still the quickest of the lot. The Ferraris improved in time, and the Bowlers improved in time as well. This is all just about keeping within their PI. I think the Ferrari and the RS200 were around similar PI with these parts put in. The Bowler goes up into sort of halfway through S1 class. The Ferrari it's slightly higher than the RS200, but it's rear-wheel drive and it's losing time through the corners because of its sliding. Whereas the Ford it's four-wheel drive. You can take a lot more speed through the corners, and that punch out of the corners the other side, you can just floor it with the RS200, and you're fine because it has that four-wheel drive grip. So unsurprisingly, the rally parts make the cars go faster. But what about the race parts? What happens if we put the cars with racing tyres, racing suspension, and a normal racing gearbox, not the short-range one? Well, we proved that this was the quicker way to go when it came to rallying on Horizon normally. It's faster to have all the racing parts, even though the racing suspension lowers the cars, which may not necessarily be good for off-roading. Having the racing parts, the racing tyres, made the cars a lot quicker. Normally, would it still make them faster when there's proper rallying parts? That's the important question. Now, I should point out that while on this run here, I didn't crash the RS200, there was at one point when I smacked a landing and promptly flipped the car. That is one of the, shall we say, downsides of running these full-on racing parts. There was one occasion where the RS200 ended up on its roof because of a landing on the floor. And with the Ferrari, there was also a slight spinning accident. I think twice. I spun the Ferrari twice on one run with the race part. I didn't have too many issues. I didn't quite get that corner right that time around. Again, I was always a little bit nervous of the jumps. There were a few times where I was sort of, shall we say, riding my luck a bit on the jumps when you're going over them and the car's kind of twisting in the air and you're thinking, oh god, I'm going to have a big crash. Again, the Ferrari, it wasn't as nice on the landing of the jumps as you would expect. We've now got racing suspension. These are lowered. Well, this is a lowered Grand Tourer, almost supercar style sort of thing. It's not really designed. Not really designed for this sort of terrain. This isn't the cleanest run that I was recording either, I should point that out. But with the racing tyres, we were still getting sensible grip. We were still getting... It wasn't suddenly now the car was terrible to drive. It was still okay through the corners. The bowler, again... I didn't pick the best clips of this, I've just realised, whoopsie. Again, the bowler, well, it was fine with this. Again, it was completely unfazed by the racing suspension and the racing tyres. It maybe was a little bit slidey through some of the corners. It just didn't feel massive. It didn't feel massively different for the bowler here. The suspension dealt with whatever I chucked at it. I didn't have any problems with rolling or crashing the bowler through here. It was pretty much fine. Through here. There was grip from the tyres. I mean, yeah, you can, whatever tyres you have on it, if you chuck it through the corners a little bit too hard, you're going to get the vehicle sliding. But there was plenty of grip from the bowler. We take out some trees. And yeah, the suspension could deal with all of the jumps without any issues. It's when we come to look at the times, things get a little bit interesting. The RS200's race and rally times are practically the same. Very little difference. However, the race parts do make it a lot higher PI. The Ferrari goes a lot quicker with the race parts. However, I did spin it twice. It is much easier to drive the Ferrari with the full-on rally parts. However, it will go quicker if you keep it all together with the race parts. That's 4 seconds quicker nearly. That's a big old margin. The Ferrari, though, does also... The PI is higher. It ends up now in S2 class, at the beginning of S2 class, with the race parts. And the bowler, it goes considerably quicker again. The PI is higher. Yet again with the racing parts. Yeah, the bowler is going. That's quite a sizable gap. It's almost 6 seconds faster with the racing parts on it. But yeah, definitely the Ferrari is a lot harder to drive with the race parts. This got me thinking. I wondered how the cars would perform when we take them on a normal tarmac circuit. So we've had the rally parts off-road, and with the Ford, you know, they were pretty much the same as the race parts, and it kept the PI a lot lower using the rally parts. The Ferrari went quicker, but was a hell of a lot harder to drive with the race parts, and the bowler, well, the bowler was just generally faster on that. I wondered how they'd fare though on a track, on your normal tarmac surface. So again, we took the cars to, I think this is the Nice Grande Sprint, is the one that we're using here. I didn't realise this at the time, but this is quite a tight, twisty, when I picked whatever circuit to use, get another point-to-point one. I didn't realise that this was quite a technical of all the sort of the sprint circuits that I could use. This one here is quite a technical one, which would come in useful a little bit later on. So yeah, all of the 3 cars came through here with the full-on race parts, and of course, you know, race tyres and so on, and the cars are pretty straightforward, pretty easy to drive around this track, and the times are what you would expect from them. The Ferrari, a high S2 class car, 2:14.9. The RS200 that starts with the, oh sorry, this is with the race parts. So the Ferrari in S2, we're looking at 2:14. The RS200 sort of a high S1, 2:16, and the bowler that was around mid S1, 2:19. And of course you've got to remember the bowler is not sort of a circuit vehicle, if you like. These times are not particularly surprising. They're basically what I expected from the 3 cars, which is good. It's always nice to get what you expect from the times when you come to drive it. So I put the rally parts back on. You already see through that first corner with the rally suspension, the Ford moves around a lot more. It's quite noticeable watching back on this replay just how much it moves. Under braking, you see how much the front of the car dives down with the higher and much softer suspension. And we've got these dirt tyres on the cars that supposedly don't give off as much grip. They don't add anywhere near the same amount of PI as get added when you put on the racing tyres. However, we do have that short-range gearbox, which is lovely on a track like this when it's never fast enough, there's never long enough straights for you to ever run out of gears. And especially with a four-wheel drive car, the fact that you have not quite as good a tyres is not so bad. It's not so bad that we're running the dirt tyres with the Ford, because the four-wheel drive can kind of overcome that. It's noticeable in the Ferrari that you're running on not as grippy tyres. When you go from the nice race tyres to these dirt tyres in the F12, you don't quite have the same grip. It will slide around a little bit more, but it's not as bad as I expected. The dirt tyres were doing pretty well, even on a 700 horsepower Ferrari. They weren't doing terribly. To be honest, they're probably the equivalent of around the sport tyres, maybe even a little bit better. They were doing a decent job, and the short-range gearbox was certainly helping these cars. You just get lots and lots of acceleration. If you remember to change gears quick enough, you get lots of acceleration out of these cars, which is always useful. And with the Bowler, well, it's pretty much the same story. The Bowler never really had any major problems. Again, big four-wheel drive system here. Yeah, it was very, very similar story to the Ferrari with this one. Yeah, you can feel that there is a little bit less grip, and yes, the car moves around a hell of a lot. That's the one thing you do notice with the Bowler. There is a lot of movement from the body of the car as you go through these corners, but you can still attack, you can still take some decent speed with this vehicle. I guess under braking you're going to have lots of diving. The lean you get through that corner is kind of scary, and then it's nose diving towards the floor. That's always a nerve-wracking moment, shall we say, when you slam on the brakes and your vehicle's doing that. But yeah, there's still plenty. You can still attack the corners with it. Again, similar with the Ford in the respect that because it's four-wheel drive, okay, you may have slightly less grip, but you can get away with a lot in a four-wheel drive car on here, because it's just got more grip in general. You can chuck it around quite a lot. When it comes to the times, well, there is an interesting one in there. The Bowler and the Ferrari are pretty much what you expect. They're going to have lower PI than the race versions of the cars, and the times are roughly equivalent, in all honesty. The RS200 is, again, lower PI, but it's not that much slower. It's not that much slower at all, and the RS200 was very consistent through all three runs with both sets of parts. So that's not sort of like a slightly random score. It was incredibly consistent. There is not a huge difference between the two there, and I think that is all down to the gearbox in the Rally one having such short gear ratios, and because the car four-wheel drive and has decent grip. You could kind of make up some of the time you lost through the corners by having such great acceleration with the Rally gearbox that, yeah, there wasn't a huge difference between the two of them. But the Rally parts suddenly weren't useless the minute we tried to take it on the tarmac. The Rally parts still performed perfectly well when we went to take them on a normal track without just maybe not quite the same level of grip as the race parts. So, as far as conclusions go, well, the easiest way to sum this up is basically the off-road parts work better on the tarmac than I expected, and the nice tarmac racy parts work better off-road than I expected. You can go rallying, you can do the extreme silly courses with a fully race-built Grand Tourer. If you want to go do that, you can, and it will survive the course, and it will be very, very quick. It could even go quicker than if it was running the rally parts. It is not quite as nice to drive. It's not quite as safe. Certainly having the softer, the higher suspension and the dirt tyres, it's more forgiving driving the car like that. It ultimately won't go quicker, as we proved. It went quicker with race parts on the Ferrari. But it will be safer. It will also be a lower PI, so you can chuck on other parts, and yeah, you can make up the PI difference. Then maybe it will go quicker. But the actual parts themselves are not sort of you must run these, otherwise you're never going to survive the course. You can still run the race parts, and the car will be absolutely fine. And if you have something like a Bowler that has, or the Rally Fighter, them sort of vehicles that has huge ride height to start with, you don't really need to worry about the rally suspension, because they've got enough ride height to survive the bumps and jumps anyway. However, also, if you go into race a car on the tarmac, the dirt parts aren't completely useless there. Having the softer, higher suspension doesn't make the cars utterly undrivable. The tyres don't have terrible. The tyres are very good on the tarmac. To be honest, no, they don't offer as much grip as the racing parts, but they've still got plenty. There's still plenty of speed to be got out of the cars. I mean, we saw the RS200 wasn't that far off the race cars time with the rally parts. So yeah, the rally parts do work the rally tyres do work pretty damn well on the tarmac. So yeah, it kind of seems as if the rally tyres are sort of in between the sports and the race tyres. They're somewhere in there with the grip, and they're just a bit more forgiving when it comes to sort of dealing with bumps and the landings and of jumps and so on. So yeah, there we go. That is a conclusion of some, not quite what I expected, in all honesty. However, that is it from me, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.